Hi, I'm Gareth Green. Have you ever had one of those slightly annoying experiences where some fantastic melody comes into your head and you think, wow, that is such a great tune. I definitely want to use that in something that I'm writing or improvising or something. And then you sort of struggle either to remember it or to write it down. It's a deep frustration, isn't it? And it's such a useful skill to be able to hear things in your head and then to be able to notate them. So at least if you can just get the pitch down, well, you can worry about the rhythm later. If you can get the rhythm as well, well, that's great. But just sort of really thinking, if I start with this first note I've heard, what's the second note? Is it above the first one? Is it below? Is it the same as? Is it gone by step? Is there some kind of leap? If there is a leap, what's the interval that's going on? It's good to be able to sort of think through what it is that you've got in this fantastic idea and then to be able to write it down. Now, this takes us into a whole area of what's conventionally known as melodic dictation, which sounds like a wonderfully kind of boring academic exercise. Actually, I think it's musically incredibly empowering. And a lot of people just struggle to be able to do this simply because they've never really done it. So actually getting a bit of practice in hearing something and then being able to write it down is amazingly empowering, because next time you have one of those great ideas and you think, wow, that's a great melody or a great snippet or just even a small musical idea, if you can write it down, then you've got it and you can come back to it later. There's that awful frustration when it comes into your head. You either can't write it down or, within hours, minutes, days, you've forgotten it. Maybe it's gone forever. So a little bit of practice in this video in actually, can I hear a melody and write it down? So here's the exercise, and you may just want to try doing this as we go with me. So we're going to listen to a melody that's going to be 4 bars long, 4 measures long. It's going to be in the key of D minor, and it's also going to have 1 or 2 what we call slightly chromatic notes. So kind of like, well, is that note a sharp or a flat or a natural? What's going on with that? Just so we can begin to tease out what we're hearing and whether we can write it down. So I'm not saying that this is the most inspired melody in the world. That's not the idea. What I am saying is, can you hear the melody? Can you begin to remember it? Because that's half the battle. If you can actually remember it, then kind of work on it a bit and think, well, what's going to help me write this down? And we'll kind of work through me playing this melody a number of times, giving you a chance to think about things. I'll offer some words of encouragement and advice along the way. And then at the end, I'll reveal the entire melody and you can see how close you were. If you kind of work on these skills, it'll be amazing how useful they are to you. So we're in D minor. The first note of this melody is D. Okay, so it's this D here, just below the stave, and it's going to be for a crotchet, for a quarter note. So that is your first note. So if you want to try doing this, all you need is a little bit of manuscript paper or even a blank piece of paper or the back of a packet or something, and scribble 5 lines on it, put a treble clef, 1 flat, B flat, 4/4, and the first note D at the bottom of the stave there for a crotchet or a quarter note. And we're going to have 4 bars, 4 measures of this. So what I'm going to do first is play these 4 measures, these 4 bars, and let's see how much of it you might be able to remember, how much of it you can just write down. And if you can't do that, well, actually, can you get some idea of the shape of it? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it going by step? Is it leaping? Because sometimes just having the kind of contour of a melody is a very useful indicator. You might just be able to sort of draw a graph of what you think the melody is doing. Okay, now the first note is this D, as I said. So that's the sound of D. This is a chord of D minor. So just to get ourselves into the key, here's a scale of D minor. So that's establishing our key. And there's that first note D. I'm going to count 4 beats in, and then I'm going to play the entire 4-bar melody. let's see how you get on. The first playing might be a shock, but just see how much you can remember, because anything you can remember, you can work on between the playings. After this playing, you might want to pause the video and see how much you can plot on the paper. And then don't worry if you don't get much, because we're going to play it quite a few times. Here's that first note D. 4 beats for nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to think about that. Okay, now it's always a shock when you hear something for the first time like that, but I wonder how much you managed to gather from that. You might have heard, for example, that there are 2 phrases, 2 measures or 2 bars in the first phrase, 2 bars, 2 measures in the second phrase. I wonder if you heard anything else, like that we've got the first note D. Did D come back anywhere else during the melody? Because that's a note that you know about. Did you hear that come again somewhere? If so, where did that happen? Did you get some idea of the contour, the shape of the melody? Where was it rising? Where was it falling? Did you get some idea about, oh, actually that note sounded next door to that one? That was definitely a leap. You know, that was a big leap. That was a narrow leap. Then you can begin to sort of fine tune those details, sort of thinking about that overall shape of the melody. Well, let's have another playing and see if you can get any more detail, having got over the shock of the first playing. Here's a chord of D minor. Here's the first note D. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Okay, now I wonder if you've started to put any thoughts together on the shape of that. I mean, did you hear, for example, from the first D, we had a big leap upwards. Okay, now it's worth thinking about, well, what was that leap? Do I recognize that interval at all? After that leap upwards, we then came down by step. Those notes felt very close together for a while, didn't they? So kind of big leap up and then coming down by step. And then we had a couple of smaller leaps before a rising leap. So the second bar, the second measure, was the most leapy bar, if you like, of the piece. Then at the end of that second bar, that second measure, we had a big nosedive, so big leap downwards. Then in the third measure, the third bar, you might have noticed we were climbing quite gently, so notes quite close together. And then a sort of slight leap up at the beginning of the last bar, and then a sort of little fiddle around that before finishing. You might have noticed that first note D comes back at the end. So D, the first note, D in the same octave is also the last note. Okay, let's have a third playing, see if we can make any progress. Now, don't worry if you're not off the starting blocks, if this is completely defeating you, doesn't matter at all. It may be that you've got a few notes here, or you've started to get the shape together. Now see if you can get a bit more detail, maybe starting to think, well, what is that leap that goes on at the beginning? Also bear in mind when you do this kind of thing, you can work backwards as well as forwards. So now you know the last note is D, well, you might think, well, what came before that D? Can I sort of think a little bit backwards from that last note? Okay, so here's that first note D with a chord of D minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause the video if you want to. Okay, I'm going to start trying to give you a little bit of help with this. You may have got this cracked, in which case, absolutely brilliant. You're on the case. If you're struggling with this, don't panic. So we had this first D that we talked about being a crotchet or a quarter note D. Then we said there's a big leap up. Now, I wonder if you heard that that leap up was actually an octave. So it's going to D on the fourth line of the stave. So that's a whole octave. You hear that D, D. If you can hear that octave, that's quite useful. So there's a couple of Ds there. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to just help you a little bit with, we've got that D there, it goes up to D, then we've got another couple of notes, then there's a bar line there. At the end of the second bar, the second measure, we end up on A for 2 beats, so half note A there. Now you may have got that, you may not have done, doesn't matter. That's the last note of the first phrase. So sort of thinking about the tonic note and the dominant note, the first and the fifth, the timpani and the orchestra go bom, 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 bom. So kind of being able to locate the first and the fifth note, the tonic and the dominant in your mind is a kind of useful thing to be able to do. But that's the last note of that second bar. Now, that's when we have a big leap downward. So the first note at the beginning of the third bar, the third measure, is actually A below the stave on 2 ledger lines, an octave below that previous A, and that is also a crotchet or a quarter note. So that kind of gives you a few bearings, like you've got the opening octave, you've got this octave between the last note of the first phrase and the first note of the second phrase. And we know that when we then go into the last bar, we're finishing on D, and that's a half note. So a minim at the end, and then there's the end of the piece. So that kind of gives you a bit of the shape of the overall melody. So now the challenge is, if you've got those notes, can you fill in the missing gaps? So you might just want to get those notes written down if you're struggling to do this, or check that if you've written these down that you're right. Because it's very easy to hear a leap and think, oh no, actually I didn't hear that as an octave. I thought it was something else, like a 6 or something. So just checking, oh, how good am I at hearing those octaves? Okay, let's have another go in the light of giving you that kind of framework. Here's the first D and the D minor chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause if you want to. Okay, now then, I wonder if we've got any of that detail in. Let's start talking our way through things a little bit. So we talked about this first D going up an octave. Having gone up the octave to the upper D, it then moves at very close quarters. From that D, it's coming down by step. When you're going by step, it's always a good thing to be able to hear, is that a semitone or is that a tone? So from that D, did it come down a semitone or did it come down a tone? So am I going from D to C sharp or D to C natural? Well, we had bottom D, top D, then we came down a semitone to C sharp. Then we came down another semitone to C natural. So can you hear that? D, C sharp, C natural is all chromatic. We're coming down in semitones. Okay, now I think the second bar, the second measure, is possibly the hardest one to get. From the C at the end of the first bar, we go down a tone to B flat. Okay, so here are the semitones, D, C sharp, C natural. Another semitone would be B natural, but we're going from C natural to B flat at the beginning of the second bar. And that's for a crotchet, a quarter note. Now, what we then do is we fall a third. You hear that? Cuckoo, falling a third. So B flat to G. And from the G, we fall another third. G, E, bom, bom. So B flat, G, E, hear those two falling thirds, and it's going crotchet, quaver, quaver, or quarter note, eighth note, eighth note. Then we go up to the A that we talked about for a minim, for 2 beats, a half note. Then the third bar starts with this bottom A, and that's a quarter note or a crotchet. Then it climbs by step, doesn't it? So the third bar, the third measure does this. So we're kind of walking up the scale. So that seems easy enough. But the thing is, what's it doing? If it's kind of going A, B, C, D, which is what it's doing, well, is it B flat? Is it B natural? Is it C natural? Is it C sharp? We're back with tones and semitones again, aren't we? Well, from the bottom A, it goes up a tone, or a whole note, to B, a whole step rather, from A to B natural. And then it goes up another tone from B natural to C sharp. So A upper tone to B natural upper tone to C sharp then up a semitone to D. So you hear that? A, B natural, and you need to write a natural sign, of course, because there's a flat in the key signature. So A, B natural, C sharp, D. Then as we go into the last measure, the last bar, it goes up a third. So D going up a third to F. It's a reverse cuckoo, isn't it? We talked about cuckoo. This one is a cuckoo going backwards. Ook, ook. So D to F. And then we've got E, so down a step, up a step, back to F. And then we're coming down to our D. And again, can you hear that third at the end? A cuckoo flying the right way this time. Cuckoo. Okay, so the whole melody. So this is where I press a magic button and all should be revealed. Are you ready? Let's hope this works. Here we go. Boom! There's the whole melody. So now you can see it written down. Okay, so you can now compare that with what you've got. Let's have a look at this melody and I'll play it one more time. So here's that first note, D. There we are. Now, you may have done this sort of thing many times before. That might have been fairly straightforward for you because you've been doing it for the last 50 years. It may be the first time you've ever done that, and you may be feeling slightly despondent because actually that was a bit of a challenge. Totally understandable. But this is an incredibly useful skill because next time you get a melodic idea in your head, this should be beginning to equip you to do just what we've done here. Write it down. Keep it for posterity, and also you can then think, great, I can now use that in my piece. So very useful to have these kind of skills. Well, if you've enjoyed this video and seen the merits of doing this kind of work, let me take you on an exciting journey to the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. When you get there, click on courses on the homepage and then search for the oral dictation course. Sounds very dry and academic. Actually, I think it's incredibly empowering to musicians because it's a whole course in doing this stuff. So we do dictation of rhythms, of melodies, doing things in 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, really getting to be able to hear chords and write them down. And it becomes kind of increasingly complex as it goes. But that course really does kind of tool you up to being able to hear ideas in your head, then being able to write them down. So it's an amazing kind of liberating experience to be able to do that. So if this is something you really want to be able to do, then go for that course. It will help you to write down ideas you've got. It will also vastly improve your ability to sight read, to be able to look at something and think, I can hear that before I even try to play it. So it's very useful all round. Have a look at the other things there on the website. Lots of courses, lots of other exciting material that should help you as well. www.mmcourses.co.uk